Okay, here's a video on order of operations to help you with your homework if you're stuck. We're going to talk about how in 8th grade and as we get older we use GEMDAS. It's the new PEMDAS. So you've already learned that P means parentheses, so you always start with parentheses first. E stands for exponents, so you take care of those next. M and D are the same color because you take a look at multiplication and division and you solve those in an order of whatever comes first when you read the problem left to right. And then last but not least, there's addition and subtraction. And they're in the same color too because they're just like multiplication and division. You solve them also in order of what comes first when you read a problem left to right. So that's old stuff. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. You probably learned that. But now that we have more advanced steps, we need to call it GEMDAS. And the G stands for grouping symbols. So I'll pull over some examples of grouping symbols. You can see that there's parentheses like we already had. And then there's brackets and braces. Those are going to show up in your problems. And last but not least, this stands for a fraction bar. A fraction bar is absolutely a grouping symbol. So this is what you take care of first whenever you have a long problem that's got some order of operations. Then there's exponents, which we've already talked about, but here's some examples. 5 to the 7th power, 3 to the 2nd power. Those you can plug into your calculator if you don't know them, and that's what solved second. Then we have multiplication and division, which we talked about, and addition and subtraction. So those aren't that new. But here's that reminder. You have to remember that multiplication and division and addition and subtraction are solved from left to right. So now that we know all this stuff, let's try a problem together. Here's example 1. And over in the corner I have a think bubble, which has where we start. We start with the G for GEMDAS. So in this problem, 6 plus 2 squared minus 10, fraction bar, or over 3 times 2, we have to think, okay, first, are there grouping symbols? And yes, there is a fraction bar. We talked about it being a grouping symbol. But really, there's no way for us to take this and divide this right now because, well, we haven't solved anything. So we're going to move on and check for exponents. Are there any exponents in this problem? Yep, right there. So we take care of 2 squared, and that's what gives us a 4. 2 squared is like saying 2 times 2, but you can plug that in your calculator. So now that we have exponents, and they're taken care of and there's nothing else there, we're going to move on to multiplication and division. So I'm looking at the top of the fraction bar and I don't see any multiplication, but on the bottom there's 3 times 2. So we have to take care of 3 times 2, and you can see in red that 3 times 2 is 6. So we're starting to get closer to our answer. The last thing that we do, if there's no more multiplication, there's no more division that we can do, we are going to just do addition, subtraction, and read it left to right. So I went ahead and took 6 plus 4, and I got 10. And then I have 10 minus 10 over 6. 10 minus 10 is 0, and 0 divided by 6 is 0. So your final answer for that entire problem is 0. So in this original problem, we needed to first do the exponents, then we did multiplication, then we did addition, subtraction, and lastly, we used our grouping symbol. And I know you're probably confused because I told you grouping symbols come first, but in this case, we couldn't do the grouping symbol first. Okay, next problem is, oh, it's got double parentheses, so they're embedded within one another. So grouping symbols is where we start. So I like to think of it like a sandwich. You start with the middle, the meat. So 14 divided by 7 is 2. So now I have 16 plus 2 in parentheses, and then plus 3. So I still have more grouping symbols, so I'm going to take 16 plus 2, and I know that that's 18, and then eventually I just add on 3, and our final answer is 21. So this problem just had a couple sets of grouping symbols, which we took care of the inside first, and then we worked our way out. But we still followed all of our GEMDAS steps. And the last problem we have has brackets and exponents. So it looks confusing, so let's just take our steps to help us figure it out. G, looking for grouping symbols. The brackets is where we start first. 2 take away 3 is -1. So now I have exponents, subtraction, and multiplication. Well, we know that exponents comes next. So 2 squared is like saying 2 times 2. Oops. And that is 4. Then I have subtraction and a multiplication. So looking at GEMDAS, I know that my multiplication division comes first. So we're going to take 2 times -1, and it's in red. 2 times -1 is -2, and then we bring down what we didn't use. So we have 4 take away -2, which is really like thinking 4 plus 2. We're going to talk about that when we do when we do integers. And our final answer, 4 plus 2, is 6. So in this problem, we had grouping symbols that were brackets and looked like this. We had exponents, we had subtraction and multiplication, and we had to follow this order so that we would get the correct answer. And that really is the new GEMDAS idea, and I hope that it's easy for you to remember.
Yeah.